Okay, what is up? I thought I would sit down today and film my labor and delivery story. Okay, so to start, for those of you who don't know, I had the roughest pregnancy. I was so sick the whole time. I had to quit working at 5 months because I was just like so sick. And when I say sick, I don't mean like, oh, I was nauseous and I'd throw up in the morning and then, you know, I mean like sick. Like I couldn't make it 10 minutes without vomiting some days, and like it was rough. I went in and out of the emerge. They thought I was gonna go into preterm labor a bunch of times, and yeah, it was not fun. So she ended up coming at 38 weeks in 3 days, 4 days, something like that. So I guess I'll say the Tuesday that week, I went into labor on Thursday. I had her on Thursday. I went to the OB on that Tuesday, and she checked me and did a membrane sweep, and I was 2 centimeters dilated. And I had been having cramps like the whole week prior, but the night before my OB, they were like particularly worse. So I was glad that I was dilating a little bit because I had been having cramps and I didn't want to be super discouraged and have nothing, like no progress be made. So when she checked me, she said, okay, you know what, your cervix is fully infaced, like you'll probably be going into labor here, like you're not going to make it till your due date. She's due October 1st, and she ended up coming the 2 days later, the Thursday, September 20th. Yeah. And I had a feeling she was coming early, like especially being in and out of emerge with all the preterm scares, and just like, I don't know, my birthday was on September 23rd, and I just had a feeling she would be here before my birthday. Yeah, I just had a feeling. Boop, boop. So that Wednesday night, me and Sam went out to dinner. We were sitting in Red Robin, and I felt like particularly gross. Like I just felt crappy, like just sluggy, and I just had a feeling. Something was up. My cramps were getting worse. I wasn't having any contractions, and like nothing I could time, like nothing, like they wouldn't come and I'd be like, oh, contraction, and then it would leave. It wasn't really like that for me. It was more just like a bad period. It just felt uncomfortable. Yeah. So I texted Sam that night and I said, Sam, get your bags ready, like your hospital bag ready, like I think tonight's the night, like, and he's like, no, it's not happening tonight. But sure enough, that night, I went to bed, and I did not actually go to bed, like I could not sleep. I was just kept going downstairs and just talking to my mom, and I could not sleep at all. So I was just having worse and worse cramps, and they were starting to get like very uncomfortable. But again, nothing I could time, like nothing that wasn't like coming and going, like, oh, here's a contraction. Like I just would notice, I'd be like, okay, I'm kind of feeling crappy, and then I'd notice, you know, like I'm starting to feel a bit better, and then I'd feel crappy again, and then yeah. So I went to the washroom around 4 a.m. and I went pee, and when I wiped, I noticed there was a bit of blood. So I told my mom, and she's like, yeah, you know, like you're starting to get uncomfortable, like you should just go in, like you're in labor, it seems. And I was just like not having it. I really did not want to go in and not be far enough along and be sent away. Like that was I did not want that, even though I only live like 5 minutes from the hospital. I did not want to go and be sent back, just because I was having such bad cramps and I was starting to be in a lot of pain, but I was also in denial because like I said, like I just didn't want to go and be turned away. Like I think that would be so discouraging for me, and I know myself, and if that would have happened, I would have felt just super crappy, and just I would have been anxious because I would have been like, okay, well, I'm so uncomfortable now, and nothing, like I'm not even dilated that far, and so how am I gonna handle it when it's, you know, gets real? So I didn't want to go, but I ended up texting Sam. It was, like I said, 4 a.m. and he came and got me, and by the time he came to the door to pick me up and get me, I was like on all fours, like crying basically, like, okay, like this is sucky. Like I was like ready to go to the hospital. I was like, okay, this might be it. But at the same time, still, like I didn't feel like contractions that were coming and going. It was more just like extremely bad like period pains and like nausea. But I was nauseous the whole time, so that wasn't like, I didn't think anything of that. So we get to the hospital and they check me. That was pretty quick. We got into a room. They checked me and, hi, how are you? And might I mention, I had a midwife for the first half of my pregnancy, and then I had to get switched over for reasons to an OB. And so the OB that came and checked me that at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whenever we, like, you know, he checked me finally, I was 4 centimeters dilated, 4 going on 5. Bless you. I mean, excuse you. I don't know. You good? And then I had only met him like once or twice, just in and out of he'd seen me in and out of emerge for my nausea in the maternity unit and such. So he checked me, he's like, yeah, no, you're not leaving the hospital without a baby. Like, this is going down. So I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, like, and he offers me an epidural. And at this point, like, I'm uncomfortable. Like, I'm crying, I'm whining, like, I'm not feeling it, but I didn't want to have the epidural because I had such a bad fear that I would go numb and I would not, like, I would still be in pain, but I would not be able to move through it. I am a squirmy person. I wanted to be able to walk around and bounce on my ball and, like, go on all fours and, like, you know, I wanted to be able to move to push this baby out. I didn't want to be stuck without control of my body and just feeling, you know, stuck. So I said no, but I was just in so much pain, so they gave me some laughing gas, the gas mask that you, like, breathe in during contraction, and honestly, I did not like it at all. It just made me feel high and, like, wonky, and I just was not having that either. So they came in and checked me, and at this point it was probably like 9 o'clock in the morning, and they checked me and I was at a 7-8, and I was starting to be in a lot of pain. Sam was trying to sleep beside me, and I was just, like, starting to be just, like, tired from the pain. Like, I was so tired, but I was in so much pain that I couldn't sleep, and I was up that whole night, right? And I was just like, okay, I'm supposed to push out a baby, but I am exhausted. And I don't want to not be able to push her. I don't want to, you know, I want to be able to get her out on my own. I don't want to use forceps. I don't want to be cut open. I don't want, you know, like, yeah, I really wanted to be able to try to do it naturally. So, but the pain was just so much. So they ended up giving me the epidural when I hit 8 centimeters. And honestly, it hurt, but it was not anything compared to the contractions, or, like, not even, like, contractions, obviously they were, but, like, the period, like, pains of early labor, like, and, like, active labor, just, they were way worse. So, I got the epidural at, like I said, I was 8 centimeters. It hurt, but, I mean, you're faced away. It's not like you're looking at this big needle, but Sam saw it, and he said it was pretty big, and, I mean, yikes. So they gave me that, and then once they gave me the epidural, it was kind of scary because I know sometimes babies' heart rates can drop after they get an epidural, and that's normal, but they were struggling to find hers, and so I was hooked up to all the belly monitors, like the straps and stuff, and they couldn't find her heart rate, and all of a sudden, like, I look at Sam, and he's, like, white as a ghost, and, like, I'm like, oh my god, like, what's going on? Like, and they're like, okay, Taylor, like, we need you to, like, kind of try and get on all fours, and I'm like, I just had an epidural, like, I'm numb. But then I just, like, literally tried my hardest, and with a couple nurses helping me, I was able to get on all fours, and they still couldn't find her heart rate, and it was, like, the scariest 5 minutes of my life. But they have a clip that they can put, like, up your vagina onto her head, and because she was head down and so low, so they clipped it on her, and then her heart rate was completely fine. They just couldn't find it after, I don't know, she moved weird. So within a couple hours, so that was at like 9:10. That was all happening around that time frame. And then around 11, they checked me. And at this point, the epidural, like the pain was better, but I could still feel when my contractions were happening. But they checked me and they said, okay, like you're ready to go. You're 10 centimeters, like you're ready to push. So Sam texted my mom and I texted Parissa, who is my cousin and her godmom and my best friend. And I texted her and, okay, it's time to push, it's time to push. So she comes and the OB is talking to me and Sam and, you know, like explaining, like you just gotta kind of explaining to me how to push. And I was really nervous I wouldn't do it right and I was just gonna like really hurt myself like just, and I was for sure certain, I was like, I'm guaranteed probably gonna crap myself on this table, which I didn't end up doing, so I'm really surprised because I just figured I would. And I also didn't even throw up in labor, which is also surprising because I threw up the whole 9.5 months with her. But yeah, so Parissa gets on one side of my leg and Sam's on the other, and I start pushing, and they're telling me like, okay, like we can see, like I'm only like 3 pushes in, and all of a sudden they're feeding me ice chips too because I was exhausted. And the OB is like, okay, we'll tell you when you're having a contraction and you just push. And I'm like, no, like you don't have to tell me because I can feel them. Like don't tell me when to push because I want to do this. Like I can tell when I need to push. So she's like, okay, like do your thing. So when I'm feeling the contractions, like I'm pushing and you know, I don't know what I'm doing. Like this is my first baby. I don't know if I'm doing this right, but all of a sudden Parissa and Sam are like, Taylor, like her head's coming, like keep going. And I did not believe them. I thought they were just saying that to me to like make me feel good, like, you know, like you're doing it. But I was like, yeah, come on you guys, like stop BSing me, like there's no way this child's head is out of me already. Because it didn't hurt, like I could tell she was right there, and it wasn't painful though. Like I know I did have the epidural, but I could feel my contractions, and I don't know, it was just like, it wasn't painful, it was just like I was so determined in the moment, and it felt like so animalistic to me. Like I was on a mission. Like the OB's like, I'll tell you when to push, and I was like, no, you're not telling me, like I got this, I'm doing this. So I would have a contraction, I would push, and like I said, Parissa's on one side of me, Sam's on the other, they're both holding up each of my legs, like classic like birth like video like movie scene, like legs up over the head type of thing. And my mom was still not there, and so Lily was coming, like they're like, yeah, she's here, she's coming, like she's almost out. Like they could see her head like popping in and out, and I guess so like I would push, and then when I'd stop pushing she would like shoot back in my coochie. So I would like try and hold my breath once I'd push to keep her out, and they're like, you have to breathe, and I'm just, it was just, yeah, it was in and out for a couple pushes. And then from my mom's perspective, she said that she was walking down the hallway, and like all of a sudden she asked the nurse's station, like, oh, where's like Taylor Johns? And they're like, oh, and then my mom heard me like grunting. I wasn't a screamer during labor. I didn't scream at all. I wasn't loud, but I did grunt a lot. Like I was pushing, like I was working at it. So she heard me in the hallway, and she's like, oh, there she is. And the nurse is like, are you allowed to go in there? And my mom's like budging in the room. She's like, yeah. And so my mom walks in, and I'm on the last push, and like she sees Lily like slide out of me. So yeah, it was me, Sam, and Parissa, and my mom there, and they took Lily, and she just came out of me like within 45 minutes of pushing. And like I just remember seeing her, and I just remember, you know, they say like, oh, you know, no one can prepare you for your first thought or the first time you hold your baby, and like it's very true. I just remember seeing her though, and my first thought wasn't like, oh, she's so beautiful. My first thought was more like is it normal that she's so small? Like I I just remember seeing her and I was so scared. I was like, oh my god, like she's so tiny, like is she okay? Like I didn't know that a person could be so small. So the OB's like, no, she's perfect, and they weigh her and she's 5'13", and I was 5'3" when I was born, so she's bigger than me. But so they weigh her and they put her on my chest right away, and I just remember feeling so proud of myself, because I was so nervous for labor. Like my whole pregnancy I was so scared. I was like, I'm so tiny, you know, anything could happen to her. And I don't know, like the whole process was just like the most beautiful thing in the world. And honestly, people say like, oh, giving birth is like the hardest thing, but it's not. It wasn't for me. It was like the most beautiful thing in the entire world. And honestly, no matter how anyone brings a baby into this world, it's beautiful. If that's C-section or surrogate or natural, or, you know, they cut you or they force up you, whatever you do, like, to bring a baby in this world is absolutely beautiful. And I was fortunately very blessed to have a very smooth and safe delivery from me and Lily. But yeah, it was nothing like I ever imagined. And I think it was crazy because it's like from the very beginning now she's taught me so much, because I just was so worked up about it, and she made it so beautiful. And like from the beginning, like she's just had like this like calming soul, and she just makes me feel so much better about everything. And yeah, it was, they put me on her chest and they just said like, oh, do you want to, you know, give a couple pushes? And so I gave a couple pushes and I pushed the placenta out, and Sam cut the umbilical cord. He wasn't going to, the nurses were going to, and I like yelled at them. I was like, stop! I was like, Sam, cut it! And he's like, no! And I was like, yes, like you need to cut it, like you'll regret it. So he did. And then it was so funny, like the whole pregnancy he's like, I'm not looking, like there's no way I'm watching. And then the whole time I was giving birth he was just like eyes on the cooch. He's just like, oh my gosh, like go. It was intense, but yeah, I got 2 small little tears, like 2 stitches, but I was up walking within like 40 minutes and went pee, and because they won't let you like leave the delivery room until you go pee. So they gave me pee. They had a catheter in me when they gave me the epidural, and I was also very, very nervous to go to catheter because apparently it hurt so bad. Like my mom was like, I hated having a catheter, but I didn't even really feel it because I was so numb from the epidural when they first put it in and like first gave it to me, so that was fortunate. But yeah, it was crazy. And now she's here, and I could not imagine a more beautiful way for her to have come in the world. I am so thankful. Like I said, she is everything I have ever. She's perfect. And like I said, any way anyone brings a baby in this world is beautiful, and that's just how my story went. And you know, like everyone's is different, and we should all, I think, really appreciate each other and appreciate like how beautiful women's bodies are, because I've always been outgoing and I've always, you know, been somewhat confident, but at the same time we all obviously have our insecurities and get really self-conscious over certain things of ourselves and certain aspects. And like I'm small, like I'm only 5'1", like barely, and before I got pregnant I was about 100 pounds, and during my pregnancy at the peak I was about 130, and I'm back now. I'm 7 weeks postpartum now, and I am back to 110 pounds. But my body, just because I've, you know, people see me and they think, oh, you know, you bounce back, like, and I did. I'm very fortunate. Like I'm young, obviously, like that's why my body's bounced back, like I'm young. But it's still hard, like, it's still a lot of changes to get used to. I mean, I'm definitely not where I was, but it doesn't matter because, like, look at this thing I got. But yeah, I think it's really important just to embrace everything and all the parts of ourselves. And I just wanted to make this video because I was so anxious to give birth, and I literally had so much fear building up to it, and I never could have imagined a better experience. And I'm just really thankful that it gave me this little girl. So yeah, thanks for listening if you made it to the end. Oh. This is Lily, by the way, obviously. She was born September 20th, 2018. Lily Laura Elizabeth.